The dawn of the automotive age promised unprecedented freedom, but it came with a terrifying hidden cost. As the first motorcars roared down unpaved roads, they carried their occupants behind panes of ordinary plate glass. In the event of a sudden stop or a minor collision, this fragile barrier transformed into a deadly hazard. The very window meant to protect drivers from the wind became a guillotine of jagged shards. Hospitals in the early 20th century began seeing a grim new type of injury. Drivers and passengers were surviving the blunt force of collisions, only to be severely disfigured or killed by the resulting storm of flying glass. The soaring popularity of the automobile was shadowed by this gruesome reality. Engineers struggled to find a solution, searching for a transparent shield that would not betray its passengers upon impact. Across the Atlantic, far from the bustling automotive factories of Detroit, a French chemist named Edouard Benedictus was immersed in entirely different pursuits. It was 1903, and his Paris laboratory was a chaotic symphony of bubbling liquids, exotic compounds, and delicate glassware. Benedictus was a man of boundless curiosity, a polymath who dabbled in both the rigorous sciences and the fine arts. He was not looking to transform car safety history. The trajectory of automotive engineering shifted with a single, clumsy movement. While reaching for a high shelf in his study, Benedictus knocked over a glass flask. It plummeted to the hard floor, striking the ground with a sharp, resonant crack. Bracing himself for the tedious task of sweeping up 1,000 dangerous shards, the chemist looked down and froze in absolute astonishment. The vessel was entirely fractured, yet it had not shattered. Every inch of the fallen container was spiderwebbed with delicate, intersecting lines, but it miraculously retained its original shape. Benedictus picked up the broken vessel, turning it over in his hands with profound fascination. It felt like a solid object, holding together as if bound by an invisible magic. The sharp edges were contained, safely locked in place, rather than scattered across the floor of his Parisian workspace. The secret lay in the flask's previous contents. Benedictus realized it had recently held a solution of cellulose nitrate, a liquid plastic he had been experimenting with. Over time, the solvent had evaporated, leaving behind a thin, invisible film that coated the inside of the glass. This dried adhesive layer had acted as a microscopic net, gripping the fragile pieces and preventing them from bursting outward upon impact. He meticulously noted the serendipitous discovery in his journal, marveling at the chemical properties, but soon moved on to other experiments. The coated flask sat on a shelf, a quiet testament to a lab accident, waiting for a purpose. Weeks later, Benedictus was reading a newspaper article detailing a horrific automobile accident in which a young woman was severely lacerated by a broken windshield. The memory of the fallen flask ignited. The connection between the shattered vessel and the perilous road struck him with the force of an epiphany. Benedictus rushed back to his laboratory, his mind racing with the possibilities of a shatterproof barrier. He immediately began trying to replicate the accidental effect on flat panes of glass, seeking to create a transparent shield that could withstand the violent forces of a moving vehicle. The transition from a curved flask to a flat window proved daunting. His initial attempts were deeply frustrating. Coating a single pane of glass with the liquid plastic left the surface sticky, prone to scratching, and visually distorted. When exposed to the elements, the film would quickly degrade, yellowing under the sun and peeling away at the edges. A single coated layer was simply not robust enough to serve as a practical windshield, forcing the chemist to rethink his entire approach to the material. The elegant solution required a fundamental architectural shift. Instead of a mere coating, Benedictus envisioned a transparent sandwich. He placed a sheet of the resilient cellulose nitrate between two separate panes of ordinary glass, then applied heat and pressure to bond them together. This ingenious configuration protected the delicate plastic core from the environment while allowing it to hold the two outer layers firmly in place if the glass were broken. In 1909, he officially patented this revolutionary composite material. He named his invention triplex glass, a nod to its three distinct layers working in perfect harmony. The resulting product was nothing short of an engineering marvel, offering the perfect optical clarity of traditional windows with a tensile strength that defied logic. The fragile nature of glass had been fundamentally rewritten by a man who simply paid attention to a mistake. Yet, the automotive industry greeted this life-saving innovation with profound apathy. Automakers were locked in a fierce battle to produce affordable vehicles for the masses, and the complex manufacturing process of laminated glass made it significantly more expensive than standard plate glass. Executives balked at the added cost, arguing that safety features did not sell cars. The brilliant invention languished, rejected by the very industry it was destined to revolutionize. It took the eruption of a global conflict to force the world to recognize the value of unbreakable glass. As World War I consumed Europe, the terrifying reality of trench warfare introduced new, horrific threats. Soldiers needed protection from chemical attacks, but the glass eyepieces of early gas masks were highly vulnerable to shrapnel and concussive blasts. A shattered lens in a toxic environment was an immediate death sentence. Military commanders desperately sought a solution, and the French army turned to the triplex material. The laminated panes were hastily adapted for gas mask lenses and the windshields of military vehicles. In the brutal crucible of war, the invention proved its absolute worth. Lenses struck by flying debris cracked but held firm, saving countless soldiers from blinding injuries and fatal gas exposure. The battlefield became the ultimate proving ground. When the guns fell silent, the military success of the shatterproof material was undeniable, yet civilian automakers remained stubbornly resistant. The economic calculus of the Roaring Twenties prioritized speed, style, and mass production over passenger protection. For nearly a decade after the war, drivers continued to pilot vehicles equipped with deadly plate glass, while the life-saving alternative remained a costly, optional luxury reserved for only the most elite custom automobiles. The turning point required a visionary builder with the power to shift an entire industry. In the late 1920s, Henry Ford was preparing to launch the Model A, the highly anticipated successor to his legendary Model T. Ford was acutely aware of the rising toll of traffic accidents and the gruesome injuries caused by flying shards. He recognized that true mass mobility required a fundamental commitment to the survival of the driver. In a bold and unprecedented move, Ford decreed that every single Model A would roll off the assembly line equipped with a laminated windshield as standard equipment. This single decision sent shockwaves through the manufacturing world. By throwing the immense weight of his production empire behind the triplex technology, Ford forced the cost of manufacturing down through economies of scale. The luxury of safety was suddenly democratized for the everyday driver. The mechanics of this protection are a testament to brilliant material synergy. When a rock strikes a modern laminated windshield, the outer layer of glass absorbs the initial kinetic energy and fractures. However, the inner plastic interlayer immediately flexes, absorbing the remaining shock and preventing the fracture from penetrating the cabin. The inner pane remains intact, protecting the occupants from both the projectile and the razor-sharp fragments of the outer layer. This invisible shield fundamentally altered the psychological experience of driving. Passengers could gaze out at the world rushing by at unprecedented speeds, completely insulated from the physical threats of the road. The terror of the shattered guillotine was replaced by a quiet confidence. The ingenious sandwich of brittle sand and flexible polymer had tamed the violence of the collision, turning a fragile window into a robust structural guardian. Over the decades, the chemical composition of that vital inner layer evolved. The original cellulose nitrate was prone to yellowing and becoming brittle over time. By the late 1930s, chemical engineers introduced polyvinyl butyryl, a superior resin that offered perfect, enduring clarity and incredible shock absorption. This new core material cemented the laminated windshield as a permanent, indispensable fixture in automotive design, capable of withstanding massive impacts without failing. The ripple effect of this technology soon expanded far beyond the highway. Architects realized that shatterproof panes could secure skyscrapers against hurricane-force winds and prevent catastrophic falls. Aviation pioneers adopted the material to protect pilots from bird strikes at high altitudes. The serendipitous discovery in a Parisian laboratory had birthed a universal safeguard, woven so deeply into the fabric of modern infrastructure that its presence became entirely expected and entirely invisible. It is impossible to calculate the exact number of lives preserved by this singular innovation. Countless millions of accidents that would have ended in tragedy were reduced to mere inconveniences, a cracked web of glass rather than a fatal shower of shards. The evolution of car safety history pivots on this specific axis. Every modern crash test, every safety rating relies on the foundational assumption that the windshield will hold its ground. The story of Edouard Benedictus reveals the profound beauty of the prepared mind. He was not an automotive engineer tasked with solving a specific mechanical problem. He was a curious observer who refused to ignore an anomaly. When the flask fell, a lesser mind would have simply reached for a broom, annoyed by the mess. Benedictus reached for his notebook, recognizing that nature had just revealed a secret of immense value. True innovation rarely arrives on a predictable schedule. It often disguises itself as a failure, a mistake, or an accident waiting for the right pair of eyes. The transformation of a liquid plastic experiment into a global safety standard highlights the unpredictable, chaotic nature of human progress. The roads we travel today are infinitely safer because a polymath in a cluttered room possessed the wisdom to interrogate a shattered vessel. Today, the laminated windshield does far more than block the wind and catch errant stones. It is a critical structural component of the vehicle itself. In the event of a rollover, the immense tensile strength of the bonded glass prevents the roof from crushing inward, maintaining a vital survival space for the occupants. It also serves as the rigid backstop for the passenger airbag, absorbing the explosive force of deployment. We look through this miraculous material every single day, completely oblivious to the extraordinary saga locked within its transparent depths. It is a masterpiece of chemical engineering hiding in plain sight. The seamless fusion of strength and clarity represents a triumph over the inherent fragility of the physical world. It stands as a testament to the stubborn human desire to outsmart danger, to build a protective bubble against the unpredictable forces of momentum. The echoes of that Parisian laboratory still resonate on every highway, in every city, across the globe. The delicate film that once clung to the inside of a broken beaker now wraps the world in a resilient embrace. The transition from a fragile vulnerability to a robust defense is a hallmark of how we shape our environment. We forge our tools from accidents, and those tools, in turn, form our future. The legacy of the dropped flask is etched into the very DNA of modern transportation. By transforming a brittle hazard into a life-saving shield, laminated glass did not just change the way cars were built, it fundamentally changed how humanity moves through the world. It is a permanent monument to human ingenuity, proving that sometimes the greatest leaps forward begin with a simple, resounding crack on a laboratory floor.